Hey everybody, I want to say a couple things about your readings. Start with Authentic Leadership. That was written by Bill George. Bill George started, well, I don't know where he started, but early in his career he was at Honeywell, and then he went to Medtronic, and he's sort of well known for his time at Medtronic. And actually, he spent most of the past several years at Harvard Business School. I'm not sure if he's still there, but he was very into the education side of business a little bit later in his life. And he's written several books. And there was a lot. The reason I'm talking about this is that there was a lot of people who seemed enthusiastic about that article. And so if you liked Bill George and the authentic leadership concept, then you might want to check out some of his books, including one called Authentic Leadership. I want to note one thing about that. One of the people that he features in that book is, or in the book and in the article, is Daniel Vasella. He is CEO, or was CEO of Novartis, which is actually a competitor of Medtronic. And so think about that. So this is a guy who is writing about leadership and authentic leadership, and he focuses on one of his competitors as a great example of authentic leadership. I think that's pretty cool. Now, Daniel Vasella's story is in itself, it's hard to ignore. This is the guy who, if you recall, he had a terrible childhood, which included a lot of pain and suffering, both physical and emotional. People who kind of should have been there for him weren't there for him. And it's the kind of story, this will sound like a joke, but I don't mean it as a joke. It's the kind of story that you might expect to result in a serial killer, and not somebody who is a great leader of a medical technology company. So I want to say that about authentic leadership. One other thing that strikes me, or that I recall from that I think is useful advice, is he suggests that we think about our lives as a house, with the different aspects or roles in our life represented by different rooms. And the question is, if the walls between those rooms were to fall, would the different people in your lives recognize the person in the different rooms? I think that is a useful bit of advice for everyone. A couple thoughts on the Steve Jobs article, and a little bit on the Steve Covey one. I don't want to. It seems a little bit overly simplistic to say Steve Covey's good, Steve Jobs is bad. Somebody titled their paper "Uneven Stevens," which I thought was pretty good. But it's a little more complicated than one's good and one's bad. I think that Steve Jobs' demeanor, his kind of unrelenting aggressiveness, served him well in some ways. The question is, what did it cost him? Life is a series of trade-offs. I'm fond of saying this, but life is a series of trade-offs. And the question is not what, it's partly what did he get out of it, but I think that's pretty obvious. He was able to, quote unquote, impose his will on other people, and he got his way. But the question is, what did it cost him? And the answer seems to be relationships. It cost him relationships, including with family members. And one of the things that I recall from reading Seven Habits is Steve Covey in Seven Habits talks about Abraham Maslow and the famous hierarchy of needs that seems to be covered in like every class. But in the hierarchy, which isn't really all that good, by the way. I really never got anything out of that hierarchy of needs. But regardless, apparently Abraham Maslow later in his life said that he wished that he had put relationships in a prominent position in that hierarchy of needs, and that he and many people kind of underestimated the importance of relationships. And it's true that when people get to the end of their lives, one of the things they regret most would be failures in the relationship sphere. So I think again, going back to Steve Jobs, the question isn't what did he get out of it, because obviously he got out of it was to impose this. Well, the question is, what did it cost him? And like I said, I think there's something to be said for relationships. And then kind of one last thing, I like Apple products. I don't consider myself an Apple fanboy. I'm making this recording on an iPad. I use an iPhone every day. I have Apple stock. Maybe I am an Apple fanboy, but the point is, I don't think that Steve Jobs, I don't think, deserves a place of reverence in the business world. And a lot of the leaders that we read about, I think, are kind of better people to follow as far as kind of mentors, spiritual mentors in the world of business. And that would include guys like Bill George. Several of the people that were discussed in the Level 5 leadership article. So that would include Darwin Smith and from Kimberly-Clark, Coleman Mockler of Gillette, the guy who, when he saw his, sort of suggested that when he saw his picture on the cover of, I think it was Forbes or something, but when he saw his picture on the cover, he seemed like he died of shock. This super humble guy. And who else? Oh, and Anne Mulcahy of Xerox was mentioned in your readings, and of course, Rambo and Pinstripes, Al Dunlop. Just kidding. All right, that's it for this week. Your next set of readings is on power. 2 short articles. I leave that for last for a reason, and it's something that I hope that you'll have kind of ringing in your ears as you go forward. So that's it for this week. Thanks for watching.